Hi guys, we are live to the Let's Talk show, and we are now streaming from
Welcome.
Avi's stage. So hopefully you will all see this video.
Yes. All right, let's do a quick recap. We've been gone for some time, for a couple of months, but we are so happy to be back. We've been, let's call it hiatus, and now we are here, we're ready to go. Today's topic is failure, dealing with failure. Let's just give a quick recap for those that don't know us, or for those who might have forgotten. Yocheved, our showrunner, she is a physician assistant. She's also a public speaker, and on many different types of engagements. A mama of a bunch of kids, and a housewife, I should say, and of course, Mrs. Esther.
She has a lot of different roles: physician assistant, health coach, business coach, mother, wife.
Tons.
And Avi, who's an incredible psychotherapist.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Tons of pets who he does therapy with to help connect with patients and their emotions, and he's just really special about that.
I appreciate that.
Amazing.
It's interesting. Every time I go to a place to do pet therapy, everybody's always obsessed with the animals. Like, oh, they're so cute. I love them. What's her name? Like, this is Sophie. This is Oliver. This is Jack. I'm like, oh, it's so nice. I'm like, I'm Avi, if that matters.
How did you even get Avi?
So funny. You're not interesting to them.
Not at all, and it's completely okay because I get so much pleasure to see everybody
They're like
playing
your
with.
babies.
They really are, 100%.
Yeah.
All right, so today we were talking about failure. Just to give a quick recap, I saw this person walking down the street with a sign on his shirt saying failure is not an option. And from there, really, we can talk about how, if that makes any sense, right? Because the only way to achieve success is really through a moment of failure. Because anyone you ask, no matter how successful or unsuccessful a person is, they will always be able to tell you the failures that they had throughout their life. So Esther, tell us, what are your thoughts?
I would really put that shirt, and if I would rename that shirt, I would say failure is only failure if you make it final.
If you make it final, ooh, I love that.
If you're just growing through your failure, you're actually becoming better at what it is you're trying to achieve. You're not just kind of like falling apart. And those pitfalls, if you make them a grade, that's what they become. But really, they're just to help you move forward.
It's like, I know your Yocheved always says that. You say, if your story is not, what's the quote?
Everything will be okay at the end. If it's not okay,
it's not the end. That's right. Yeah. Exactly. So we were talking with, number one thing is when we're dealing, I'm just going to, for those of you who were tuned in before, we were doing a live before. For some reason, many people were not able to tune in. There was something wrong with the camera. So we're going to start again. We're just going to make this a really quick intro. So,
go ahead.
If you go on my page.
I will just restart my phone.
Okay. So, number one thing is we want to talk about failure and how to be nice to yourself when we deal with failure. Because think about it this way. As soon as something bad happens to us, we are our number one critics, where we always say things to bring ourselves down. Also, it's really important for us to understand that when we do fail, to allow ourselves to be sad. It's okay to be sad. So many times people
to be sad.
It's good to be sad sometimes.
being that it's not necessarily about being sad, but allowing to rephrase it, allowing ourselves to feel emotions.
I want to just say, a few seconds ago when I kind of disconnected the live and we went on and again. The reason it was so important to me, even though Avi and Esther were like, what are you doing? I actually think this is such an important show that it was worth for me to restart the entire show, but not have a show where we're going to have interruptions and we're going to be in the middle of nowhere. Why? Because I think there are many people in this world, including myself, and I was just saying, sorry to cut you off a few minutes ago, where I actually felt like a total failure even coming onto this show tonight, where if we don't realize that every single person goes through feeling where they are not perfect, where they failed, whether it is as a wife, as a mother, as a coworker, as a friend, if we don't realize that that's okay to feel that way, you're not alone, you're going to give up on wanting to become a better version of yourself because you're going to feel like there's no point to you. Like, what's the point of me trying to be a good mother? I failed. I can't. What's the point of me going to work? I've been kicked out of a few jobs, so I'm never going to be a good worker. I failed so many tests, so I'm never going to graduate with anything. That's why we had to restart the show, and we had to come back, because even if we make it a 20-minute show as opposed to a long 1.5-hour show with many interruptions, the 20 minutes of this show, which I think is important, because I think Avi has a lot to say with his experience.
I think we all have a lot to
Esther
say.
has a lot to say with her experience. Even if we do that and somebody can walk away, because we don't do this show, as much as it is so much fun, it's not about having fun. It's also about offering our personal examples, stories, lessons.
You know what's interesting? This whole situation just taught me something. For those, again, who are just tuning in now for the first time, just a couple of minutes ago, we were doing a live show on Yochevet's page. For some reason, the feed wasn't coming in. We had to cancel the show. It was such a great intro. It was such good conversation. And we just, for those who watched it at that moment, and we ended the video. And then we had to just restart it 3 or 4 times, and we're now streaming. So if you're just joining us, I want to give you a little example about what just happened. We made a great show. We were in touch the whole week. We were so excited to make this happen. And here we are, and the show fails. And now we're starting again. If this would have happened, I would say maybe 2 years ago when we really just started Facebook, this would give me like a full-blown anxiety, panic attack, because I would say, oh my gosh, well, everybody's watching. We messed up. How can this be? What's going on, right? But because we did it over and over and over again, and we were on Facebook, and this was such a growth experience for myself to be able to be in front of a camera. It's a very interesting process. I mean, what was it like for you to be able to go on the first time afraid of judgment, afraid of what people might think or might say, but going on now and really kind of building self-confidence, I should say, and oh my goodness, if you kind of go down through my page when I just started, you're like, wow, what a difference, right? Because, and can I say that was a failure? Absolutely not, because I feel like that was a moment of growth. So really, we can apply any scenario in our life as an opportunity to see that in order to achieve any type of success, there has to be moments where you fail. They asked Thomas Edison, the person who created the light bulb, right? They said you tried thousands of times to, you failed thousands of times. To figure out the light bulb, and here you are, you figured it out. And what did he say? He said,
I didn't fail 1,000 times. I learned how not to do it 1,000.
There you go. So it's all about perception and how we see it.
The mindset. It's all about really how you come into it thinking, what is this going to teach me versus I'm a screw up or I'm going to fail. And I think we need to teach our children.
Yes,
that.
I was actually just going to transition to that and say, many times, especially when dealing with parents, a lot of times parents that want that like one magical book, like give me that magical book, let me read that book, and let me be a better parent. There's no such thing. Like as a therapist, every single person that comes into my practice, into my office, every single person has their own treatment plan. Every single person has their own journey, their own path. What are your thoughts, Yocheved?
It's interesting you said what you said a few minutes ago about if this was a few years ago, how would we react, right? So there are many people that are just starting social media, and I look at them and I say to myself, oh my God, I wish I could give them a hug sometimes, because I feel what it's like to be in the spotlight. When we're in the beginning, like you just said, when we just started doing this, it was all about, for me personally, I don't know how it is for both of you, but for me personally, I valued my content based on how many likes or views it got. And if I felt that my videos got a lot of views, then I did a good job. And if my videos didn't get such a good view number, then I didn't do a good job. And that's how that was my version of success. That if everybody commented and everybody said how great it was, then yay, I was great. But if all of a sudden this video didn't get as many shares or likes, then I didn't do a good job, and what was wrong with me? And then with time you realize, when you start to kind of realize, hey, how do I define my version of success and failure? If we define our success based on the feedback of people around us, we're actually failing. Because what we have to understand is everybody's version of what they are interpreting as perfect is different for everybody. For example, if you have a career dream and your career dream is to be a makeup artist, and everybody else thinks you have to be a doctor or a lawyer or go to school and go to college, and now everybody else is not going to support you for what you want to go for, it's almost like you're failing. But you are maybe the most successful because that's what you're good at.
Right.
That's actually what you're going to be a masterpiece at. Right. So sometimes we have to really, really, really take a step back and realize it's not always about how many people are going to cheer for you.
Right.
In order to determine how successful or how valued you are. Sometimes it takes one person to be your cheerleader and make you the greatest of what you're going to become.
And the greatest cheerleader is yourself. I think what Yocheved, on a deeper level, what Yocheved is trying to say is when our identity is wrapped in to our success, meaning we become the success. What that means is, think about it this way, and I said this last time, if you go outside and you get soaking wet, right? Are you the rain? No, you're not the rain. Right? You come home, you change. That was just one component of you. So any journey that we take on to understand that it's the quest that you go on, that doesn't define who you are as a person. Just because you had a setback does not mean that this is defining you as what kind of person you are. We were saying, I said on the previous time, I said number one thing is being kind to yourself. When you have a friend that messes up and is broken and shattered and they come to you and need a shoulder to cry on, what do? You comfort them. You say kind words to them. You encourage them. So then why is it so difficult to do that for ourselves? A lot of times I'll share with my clients, like, go to the mirror and look in the mirror and just sit with that for a little bit. And talk to that person looking at you. How do you feel that person looking back at you? Do you feel comfortable? Do you feel content? And a lot of times, people will say no, they don't feel comfortable. They feel very weird and awkward giving themselves that boost, that talk. But number one thing is when you start off the day is to be able to give yourself that pump. Esther, what are your thoughts?
Yesterday, I had I didn't think about this until just now, even though we discussed this title for like a little while. I had this real conversation yesterday with my husband and my oldest son, and I just started crying in front of them, and I said, I really failed at this. It was a situation as a friendship that I felt that I didn't do the right thing, and I just kept, my emotions kept getting in the way of my behavior to want to be better, and I just couldn't figure out how to remove that piece from myself and just see this person with more compassion. It was really hard for me because my button that gets pushed is like, own your behavior and behave correctly. And if you don't, then I can't look at you in such a way. So when I found out something about this person, I told my husband, I said, now I really can't make it work anymore because I really feel like God was giving me this opportunity to fix this character flaw. I know it's for me that this situation, this thing has unfolded itself into my life, but I just kept saying, like, I wish it would go away already. Like, I just wish I didn't deal with this. And I told my husband and my son, like, I really failed myself. I failed the situation. I failed the person. And my husband and my son, and I was so, like, touched by this. They're like, you can still make it right. Like, you didn't fail. I said, what do you mean? What can I do? They're like, it doesn't matter what happened up until now. It matters the next moment, like how you choose to step forward into the next step. And I said, but what is that? Because I keep failing that.
Based on what you said in the beginning, the first time you said a person falls so many times. Seven times.
It's hard to fall 7 times, but gets back up again.
How about a tzedekis?
Also, you might even know about the tzedekis.
1,000 times, right?
Can I ask you a question, Avi? Give us a situation, if it's not too personal. Of a situation where you felt like you are a failure, but actually you weren't really a failure.
Oh my goodness!
You thought you were a failure.
By the way, this was completely non-conscious, but look at what happened. As soon as she asked me that question, I folded my arms. Did you notice that subconscious guard I just put up?
Like,
but let's release. Let's take exactly. But if I ever failed, of course I failed. I failed so many times. And I think, Esther, I can very much relate to what you said in the first video, that in school that you weren't always the greatest student, and
I wasn't even an average student.
An average student. So I should say I was being nice. I should say that I can very much relate to that as well, because I did not, like you said, our parents were immigrants when they came here, and for a person who's coming into a new place, it's very difficult to know what school to put them in and give them the whether it's the education. And when I came in, there weren't that many schools that that I was able to achieve the highest level of education, and even teachers that were teaching at the moment. Long story short, I wasn't in the best schools, and I wasn't getting the best grades, and for a very, very long time, that was kind of, on my chest, and it bothered me so much, and I failed many, many times in school,
right.
And actually until I went to college.
That taught you so much.
Well, that did, but it definitely was a journey. Anything I achieved, any type of success, there are some people, those people who are able to just look at something and just ace the test and get 100.
We all hate that person.
I was
That's
never.
We hate you.
I was never that person. I had to really break my head and study and read over and over and over and over again to understand the concept. And I guess this is my journey. This is my path. So there's so many different things, so many different challenges that come up along the way. And yeah, for sure, you'll beat yourself up for it. Again, you'll always ask yourself, why does this happen to me? Why am I dealt with this type of hand? And I was saying this on the previous slide, and we got cut off exactly at this time. But imagine you decide to go on vacation, and you pack your bag, you get your luggage, and regular simple luggage from Walmart or some what is it, TJ Maxx or Target store, right?
Costco, I don't know.
Costco. So you get your luggage, you fill it up with clothing, and you go to the airport. And all of a sudden, in the airport, you see this other person across you with this like really expensive Louis Vuitton or Gucci bag, and you're thinking to yourself like, wow, that's a cool bag. And they ask you, hey, you want to switch? And you're thinking to yourself, like, I'm going to go on this vacation. I have all my specific things in there that I like. I have my specific shoes and my specific, jacket that I like. That might be a fancy bag, but I really can't use anything that's in there, right?
Wow.
And you don't take that bag. And you just take your own bag and you board the flight. Same thing in our life. Just because somebody else's lawn looks greener than ours does not necessarily mean that that lawn is built for us. And again, especially being a therapist, working with people and listening to the most vulnerable things that people express, we're able to see that everybody has their own lot. Everybody, and guess what? Just because they're going through those struggles, and I see this every single day, and for me, this is something that keeps me going further, and you should know, they give me a lot of strength by hearing how they're able to succeed in their journey. To be able to, every single person that has these troubles, guess what? They also have the answers to their problems. I see this all the time. What are your thoughts?
I think I love the analogy with the bag. I think that's
Drop the mic.
That's great. That's great. I want to ask Esther now the same question.
All right.
What was a moment, I know you shared your story about how you were growing up and school was very difficult for you. Any other story that you can share where you felt that you're failing, but in reality you realized you really weren't failing?
Yes, I did. Actually I did. I really worked hard in college. I went to Yeshiva University. And I was really excited. I was going to go to Columbia University because they had a hybrid program for occupational therapy. And I took all of the courses for OT. I went to NYU to the volunteering. I did volunteering at another. I was like in it. You know what I mean? Like if they told you, I did that twice. You know what I mean? And so when I get all my references, recommendations from all these teachers who have done this many times, they all tell me, you're a shoo-in. You're going to get in. So what do you think happens when you get a really thin letter in the mail from Columbia University? You're excited, you think maybe that's how they do acceptance letters. So you open it up and you are heartbroken. Like, I cried. I was like, I'm not even waitlisted? Like, how did that happen? My GPA, everything looked appropriate. I cried such bitter tears, and I remember, you remember those failure moments. You remember where you were. I was in my mom's house.
Yes.
I just gotten married. I just found out I was pregnant, and my mom looked at me. I remember she probably offered me some food for sure, because like this is the solution for tears in a Bahrain home, right? So she says to me, Estera, this is good. You'll see. It's okay. I'm like, what kind of state? This is not helping, Mom. I need to get into this school for me. This is the only place I applied. So I'm not a smart choice, probably, but at the time it felt like it was a real shoe-in. What happened after? I'm not a OT. I'm a PA.
It's funny, I went to the same program and I didn't get accepted.
To Columbia University?
No, I went to OT program and they rejected me.
To Columbia?
No,
Turo. Yeah.
And look at that, they're both
so
PAs.
Funny, right?
We both got rejected from the OT program.
I got rejected from that program.
And now they are killing it in the medical field. Look at that.
And when I did get accepted at York, I got accepted to both the OT and the PA program at the same time.
Really?
Yeah, it was a really bizarre situation.
Wow.
But at that point, I was like, Hashem is giving me this. You know what? Really, failure is perception. It's perception and perspective. If you feel you failed, it's time to change not what you're doing, but how you're seeing what's happening.
It's so interesting. Go ahead, say what you want to say.
No, go.
They both gave examples of schooling when I asked them a question about failure.
Let's hear yours, Khaled.
That's what's interesting. We actually interpret failure with tests. I failed a test.
Right.
I failed in school.
Wow.
That's true.
Actually, my story of failure has nothing to do with school. And in the beginning, when I share the story, I told Avi yesterday, when we had a little bit of like a rundown, what my story would be. And today I kind of said, I don't think I should share this story. I kind of felt like a little embarrassed that I thought that was a failure. But now I feel like I'll share it anyways, because somebody maybe needs to hear this, and if somebody felt like
I'm
getting ready because I don't know what she's talking about.
Maybe that's going to help somebody else, okay? So when we come from the culture that we come from, we are obviously, I wasn't born here, Esther wasn't born here. It happens to be with childbirth. We were raised that if you give birth naturally, you are considered, wow, she gave birth herself, excellent. But if you gave birth via C-sections, because C-sections back in the days, and not in America,
big one. Oh, yes.
were considered to be in very, very last resort situations. Like something terrible had to happen for you to have had a C-section. So with that culture and upbringing and mindset,
and a lot of times even families won't even celebrate the birth.
When I was going into my first labor, of course, like every other mother, and you see, I could talk about it freely now, but like every other mother, my dream was, of course, to give birth naturally, right? To be able to do it by myself, because that's what's celebrated. But I failed. In my mind, when I had my first C-section, it was like, oh my God, I failed. I couldn't give birth by myself. Something is wrong with me. Again, now it's like, am I crazy? How did I even think of that? But back in the day, instead of feeling so happy that I have a healthy child and I did so well, it was like, no, I don't want anybody to know that I didn't give birth by myself. And I actually remember how embarrassed I was to tell people that I had a C-section.
Really?
Yeah, because it was like, no, I can't. I
did hear of this. This is actually pretty common. You'll be surprised, but it is pretty common that women will be embarrassed to share that they had a C-section because they feel like it wasn't a real birth. It wasn't a real. But now
people actually request to do C-sections. Meaning now here in America, this is very, very, very accepted, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But when you're coming from a society and a culture where people only used it as last resort, where it was emergency situations, and it doesn't go this way, it's almost like, no, how did that happen? The doctor probably shouldn't have rushed you, and there's such a guilt trip about it, where it's almost like maybe there was something wrong with the whole situation, and then you say to yourself, but who cares? how you gave birth, but who cares? It's the process is not what matters.
Wow.
What matters is having a healthy child. What matters is having a mother who's alive and well, and she's feeling well. So I think sometimes people that have hard times giving birth, getting pregnant, raising children, having children with disabilities, they sometimes will come across like they're failures, like they couldn't have a healthy child.
Can I actually share something? Wow, first of all, Yocheved, and this is exactly these examples that you bring, both of you guys, to the table. You both are being so vulnerable and open, and I think these are the most teaching moments, even for myself, hearing it gave me chills, to be able to see that even though through a moment like that, you can get strength and be able to now talk about it. You said something about failing as a parent. I remember I was on the phone with a parent who was really in a lot of pain because they said that they have a sick child, and their child really loves swimming. Okay, but so I said, okay, great. So I think that's an amazing way to be able to connect with your child. They said, yeah, but I can't take my child swimming. I said, why not? They said, because my child uses a very loud tone of voice when she wants to get a message across. I said, so what's wrong with that? She's like, I'm afraid that people are going to turn around and they're going to look and they're going to make me feel uncomfortable, and I don't want to make an uncomfortable situation. I said, I understand that, but your daughter is not well. So what does it really matter what people are going to think and what people are going to say? And this is something that we need to internalize and really hold dear to our heart, because there will be moments where, yes, people will judge you. And that's the biggest thing when it comes down to failure, is that we are so embarrassed and so scared for somebody to look at us and be like, haha, you didn't make it, right? But really, to say that I matter most. That's the most important. The biggest takeaway is that in a moment before that lady who wanted to take her child swimming didn't feel comfortable doing that because her child was not well, and the way the child spoke, and she had flapping hands. I believe the child was autistic, so the child had flapping hands and would run and would speak very loudly. So the mother was embarrassed what people might say. At that point, at that moment, it's not about the people, because guess what? People will always talk. This is just how it is. Go ahead.
It's funny because I have friends who are divorced, right?
Okay.
And they feel embarrassed because it's almost like I have a failed marriage.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to stay with my partner. And meanwhile, they're sitting and really internally feeling like, why couldn't I have been loved?
Yeah.
And why are people probably talking about me? But when you hear the story of the kind of marriage they were in, and there was infidelity and cheating and this and that, and you kind of say to yourself, well, that's abusive. Nobody has to go through that. But then you know to yourself that what society looks as normal, and of course it's normal, meaning for society to be married and to have children and to have like this perfect, what looks to be perfect marriage. But if that's not how it is, and if a person is in an abusive relationship, maybe they're not failing by letting go of abusive relationship. Maybe they're succeeding because they're able to open their doors and having a very peaceful, positive life.
I actually asked somebody once. I said, share like one of the happiest moments of your life, and they said, my divorce.
Oh.
And I said, wow, that's so interesting. Tell me about that. And I said, once I got divorced, I felt like all my doors opened up for me. I became the person I'm meant to be. I'm able to live my authentic life, my authentic self. And it really kind of like a light bulb went on, is that, yes, you're right, Yocheved. So many people get divorced and they feel like, that's it, my life is over. I failed in this life. So I might have these couple of kids and I'm divorced, and who's going to marry me and who's going to take me? And they create this narrative, this story, this negative story for themselves, and they kind of live in that. But once they either go to therapy or they talk to a friend or talk to a close one and understand that, no, that might have been just one component, one part of your life, but it does not define the rest of your story. Just like you said, if it's not, what is it? If it's
everything will be okay at the end.
Yeah,
if it's not okay, it's not the end.
If it's not okay, it's not the end. Whatever. May you live till 120. But that is exactly the takeaway, is that yes, there will be moments like a person goes through divorce, or sometimes a lot of times, and this happens with, let's say, religious families. Again, I'm not calling anybody out. I'm just giving you an example. Let's say you have a very religious family, and then you have one of the children who may not be as religious or might not be religious at all, right? A lot of times you'll have parents who are embarrassed, right? But a lot of times when I'll work with families, I'll have parents saying, I want my child to wear a black hat, or I want my child to go to shul with me, or I want my child... And they create this type of story for their child, but at the end of the day, it's like, one second, who are you doing this for? Are you doing this for your child, or are you doing this so you don't get judged by people? It's so important to understand, especially when dealing with children and teens. They are at the most vulnerable state. Love is the most important thing, especially at that moment. So judgment and talking about failure and parenting, a lot of times, yes, when working with parents don't want to fail. They want to become the best parents. But guess what? There's no such thing as the best parent, because even if you do everything you can to the T, trying your best, whatever it may be, sending them to the best schools, sending them to karate and piano classes and all these different extracurricular activities, and giving them an allowance and being the best parent, when they grow up, there will be certain characteristics that they'll say, I didn't like this about my parent, and I didn't like that about my parent. This is just the circle of life. So the takeaway is really do the best that you can, understanding that you are just a messenger. That's what it is. I see you're smiling. Go ahead.
I was just remembering my when my oldest was it's like pre-K, UPK. They gave him like some writing assignment. He was just learning how to read and write. And I remember my husband and I, we were like, we are on this. We are parents, and we are going to raise this kid to be an extremely educated individual. And I remember, like, we were afraid to fail as parents. And what happens when you have this fear of failure, you end up having a lot of impatience with life. Because
expectations.
Yes, because you can't just let time teach it. You're like, let's do this now. And I remember thinking, I want you to be able to do it perfectly. No, cross it off, do it again. No, I'm the poor child. Like, I don't know, there must have been some miswiring at that point already early on. He was about 4
No, I think it's about being.
We learned with him.
You wanted to. It's interesting because they say with the first child, you don't let anybody hold your kid. You want to be the only one to hold it. You have a schedule, you have a system in place, right? And then with the second one, you let them crawl, and with the third one, they're eating off the floors, and you're fine with it, right? I know that I think Zoya said it all has to do also with personality. Yeah. Yes, it does have to do with personality. I believe what Zoya, one of the comments she wrote is that dealing with failure has to do with personality. Absolutely. So let's talk about how personality gets developed. It gets developed from the moment that we're born, right? From things that are happening in our life, from the people around us in our environment. That condition us to be a certain type of way. And if this keeps going on and on and on and on, our own identity, our true identity, ends up being buried 6 feet under. So now when we become an adult, and a lot of times adults will have childish tendencies and characteristics, and you wonder why, like, hello, this is a 30, 40-year-old person. Why are they still acting like a 7-year-old child, right? It's because we all have that inner child in us. We all do. A lot of times when people come into therapy, even though the 40-year-old person is sitting on the couch, it's actually we're working with the 7-year-old that's inside their heart. And oftentimes, when we help that 7-year-old inside their heart, the trauma becomes reprocessed, and they're able to really handle the failure or whatever it is that they're going through.
Wow.
That's a great point. As far as personalities, for sure it has a lot to do, because I feel like people who are with a very low self-esteem it is, they will definitely be more prone to interpreting things as failures quicker than those people that have a very, very high self-esteem. Because people with a high self-esteem, they don't right away feel like, okay, I failed. They feel like, so what? It's okay. Everybody goes through this. But I also feel like as much as it has to do with the personality and our self-esteems, it also has to do with our cultures. I think cultures have a humongous role in how we interpret things. Because if you talk to people from different cultures, what's acceptable for our culture and not acceptable for our culture is like, what? Seriously? You guys can't accept that for somebody else? So I feel like a majority of the time, cultures have a humongous role on what we internalize as failures and successes. Because if the culture states that you have to tolerate X, Y, Z, and we don't tolerate X, Y, Z, then it's like a lot of people will start talking about this person, because a lot of people are going to start spreading rumors about this person, because it's not in the culture to be a certain way. So although we don't promote divorce, and we never say divorce is good, right? When you start to say that there are people that are happier because they escaped abusive marriages, sometimes culturally people will be like, no, you can't promote that. We can't say that it's good to get divorced, but nobody says it's good to get divorced. We're saying that only if, God forbid, there's an abusive relationship, that sometimes that's why it exists. So does that make sense what I'm saying?
Absolutely. What I will say is like this. A lot of times when working with couples, I always make sure to tell them, I do not have an agenda as to what happens in this room, meaning in this therapy room, right? I say my goal is not to keep you married. My goal is not to get you guys divorced. It's your goal, whatever it is that you want. If you want to make this marriage work, let's make it happen. If you feel that both of you will lead a healthier, happier, more successful life separately, divorced, let's go for it. Years ago, yes, there was this concept that if you got divorced, you are a failure, right? Now that we're living in the free world, you understand that this is your life. You don't live for anybody. If you're living in an abusive relationship and you're trying to make it work, yes, what I will say is like this. I just want to give a disclaimer. Marriage is a lot of work. It's a 24-hour, non-ending cycle. It is constant work. Constant work. Okay? So, 100%. So if you did everything in your power to make it work, whether you communicate, whether you have date night, whether you go to counseling, you do all these things, and at the end of the day, you end up seeing that this is a toxic relationship and everything you're doing is just not, you guys are two different people, then divorce is an option, because especially when there's kids involved. A lot of times people will say, oh, I'm going to stay in this relationship because of the kids. Guess what? The worst thing that you can do for your kids is being in a toxic, negative relationship and them seeing the two people that they value the most bickering and fighting and at each other's throats.
I one time made a statement and I said that we can't live for people. We have to live for ourselves. Meaning we have to do what's good for us and be happy with who we are. Just like Avi said, one parent can have different types of children. And if one child is not exactly what we wanted this child to become, but he's the best version of himself, of who he could become and his potential, we should be proud of that child, right? So when I made that statement one time, I got somebody calling me and sending me a voice note about how wrong I was for making such a statement. And I didn't really I didn't put so much thought into it, because I realized that a lot of things that's being said here, for example, is also dependent on how people interpret it. Like if somebody interprets what's being said with a grain of salt and really understanding globally of what the concept is, that nobody promotes divorce. Nobody promotes going out of what your parents dreamed for you. Nobody says don't go to college and get a degree. If people don't interpret things the wrong way and interpret things with a half full glass, we're not going to pick on things and say, well, why is this said and why is that said? Everything is generalized.
Think about it this way. And a lot of times this comes up in session when I work with people and they say, let's say to them, you matter most, right? And they say to me, wait, but isn't that kind of selfish? Like, why don't they think about other people? So I say, think about it. Like here we have a plate of peaches, right? Look at this gorgeous plate of peaches, right? Imagine I have a family of 6, and I give every single person a peach, okay? And I take my peach and I give it away, right? That's being selfless, right? Now, if I take everybody's peach and I eat all the peaches, right? That's being selfish. But if I give everyone a peach and I take a peach for myself and somebody says, hey, can I have your peach? And a lot of times this happens with parents. You know, when you serve children food, like, right? Let's say you get a pie of pizza and everybody ate and everybody's good. And you sat down and you're just about to eat your sandwich and your kid runs up to you and says, can I have some? You're like, but you just ate, right? So a lot of times, parents will break off their own and give it to their kids. But let's get back to the peach story. When you eat all the peaches, that's selfish. When you give away all the peaches, that's selfless. But when the person says, can I have your peach? And you say, you have your peach, now I'm going to have my peach, right? That's assertiveness. Establishing assertiveness. That's really, really important. It's absolutely not being selfish if you're saying, I'm living in a toxic relationship, and you have parents that might say, you're going to divorce, you're going to embarrass the family name, what's going to be with the kids, and they create this whole story as you're going to be so screwed if you get divorced. But you know, at the end of the day, that when you're living in a toxic relationship, go ahead.
I want to just, I need to finish your thought.
When you're living in a toxic relationship, to understand and create boundaries, something that you were touching upon. Boundaries are so important. There's negative, toxic people all around. It's about how you create that boundary and who you allow to your life. I know we're going off topic, but
I
go
know,
ahead.
we're going to wrap it up soon because it's late. But I just want to add, you said, if you're in a toxic relationship, it's okay to... So here's what I think. I think a lot of people, like there was a time in my life, in my marriage, and I think you guys can vouch for this for your own maybe, where I believed I was in a toxic relationship and I was in a toxic marriage and my husband didn't understand me and I didn't understand him. Does that mean I should get divorced?
Absolutely
No.
no.
So when we say if you're in a toxic relationship, what we really mean, I think, is how you are working through it with your partner and understanding your marriage is an evolution of the two of you.
Right.
And yes, there are marriages that don't evolve, like they kind of live their full life cycle and this is as good as it gets and you're working through it and it's not getting better. But there are a lot of marriages. I was just talking to a girl the other day for 1 hour and she's a lovely woman. She has, a few kids. She's been married a few years. And she says, I think I should get divorced. And I started talking to her, and you know what? It sounds like on the surface, this is a toxic relationship because she's sharing with me all her pain.
Exactly.
So when I asked her to share with me what you fell in love with him, it shifted the whole mood in her voice. It shifted the tone. It was hard for her to tell me at first because she hadn't primed her brain. A lot of us think toxic. I'm in a toxic relationship. You gotta take a look at, if you're identifying red cars because you own a red car, you won't notice any other color. So if you're not priming your mind to recognize the valuable pieces of your partner, yes, it will become more toxic because you're not part of the solution.
I also, sorry.
Go ahead.
I personally, like my husband said, when we just got married, one of the most important statements he said was, never put divorce as an option. Like, don't even put that topic into your marriage. Like, don't even make that statement. Like, divorce should be the last resort. Because, like both of you said, marriage is very, very difficult. But part of it being so beautiful is, despite the difficult moments, you still come to terms and you still make love and you still have memories and moments together. It becomes toxic when we ourselves interpret every little disadvantage, quote unquote, as being toxic. Right. We're not talking about toxicity where my husband got me the purple bag instead of the black bag I wanted. We're not talking about my husband came 15 minutes late and he didn't call me. We're not talking about that. Right. When we say toxic, we're really referring to like somebody's beating somebody up, abuse. Again, Avi might say, because he's a psychotherapist, so for him, toxicity may be something with a finer line. But
again, what you were saying, like sometimes where the person can't make it work. If let's say you're dealing with somebody and they're both coming to therapy and saying, okay, this is your homework and this is your homework, and then they come back the next week and we're like, okay, so how did the homework go? And one partner did it, and the other one's like, yeah, I'm checked out.
Yeah,
and they already are becoming different people and don't have that chemistry and not wanting to work. The first question I asked the couple is, can we make this work?
Wow.
Would you like to make this work? Do you guys want to stay married?
Right.
If you both want to stay married,
that's what I asked her also. I asked her that too.
But I feel like sometimes I mean, say if I'm wrong. By the way, obviously, we don't have to be beaten up in order to feel toxic. You know what I mean? I was just going
I mean, by the way,
extreme.
that does happen.
But I'm just saying, you know, there's some people who be like, well, I wasn't beaten up, I got divorced. No, you know what I mean. I'm saying, like, we shouldn't jump into conclusions.
It's
right
physically,
away.
emotionally, and psychologically.
Preparing for the
Oh my God, what is? No, but like, you know, Avi, when you said that, do you see yourself having a future? Personally, I think like I'm married 18 years, right? And I know there are people married longer, but there are within the like long time when you're married, there are moments in your life where you feel like maybe I made a mistake, maybe we're not meant for each other, maybe this, maybe that, because sometimes certain things happen and you kind of feel like you disconnected, but it's temporary. So if we overreact and we take an action right away at that moment without, like Esther said, taking a step back and saying, well, why did I fall in love with this person? But maybe this person...
I want to work with this person.
Right. So aren't there moments in our life where we do feel like maybe we're not really
a
ready for
lot
each
of times I'll see this where there's resentment in the relationship, and usually that happens, and I talked about this in the previous slide, is that when we 100% immerse ourselves and throw ourselves into the relationship and sacrificing our own identity. I always say this, in every relationship there are three entities: the husband, the wife, and then the couple. It's very important to remember, just because you're in a relationship, still to do the things that you love to do.
So
create your own empire. Yes, he will create his empire, whatever that may be. She will create her empire, whatever that may be. And then they together will create their empire. For example, building a home together, raising a family together, right? But if there are things that each one of them like to do individually, it's so important to be able to give them space and allow that to happen.
Because the women struggle. I mean, I personally struggled with that. Like, my husband needed his own time with his own space, and I was just like, don't we want to spend time together all the time? Who doesn't want to spend time together with their spouse all the time? It was too much.
So to wrap it up for tonight, and I know our tradition, let's call it, our very long awaited, I actually missed this part of the show. Our tradition is to bring out some games at the end of the show to share with all of you. So for tonight, we're just going to show you a couple, but we're going to play one game. For tonight, there's a game called Love Languages. We're not gonna play this one tonight. Maybe another time. It says Better Language for Better Love. You can get it on Amazon. It's really cool. There's another one. It's called Topics. You can get it online. Another one called Deeper Connections. You can get online too. We're going to definitely.
You play this with your wife?
I absolutely do. And in all honesty, we've been married a number of years, but. You think you know a person, and then you start playing this game. You can have one question can last no, really. And I'm telling you, you're married 18 years. You think you know your husband. You think you know your husband, but you're gonna ask him one question. For one question, some questions it's going to be a minute, and some questions you'll be on it for like 30 minutes. Discussing the depths of each personal lives. We actually played it with my wife this past Shabbos, and it was really intense. I think we only went through one card, and it's really amazing to know how
you got your money's worth on that one.
Yeah, 100%. So today, we're actually going to be playing a game. It's called Coping Skills. I bought it on Amazon, a really awesome game, and I'm going to ask it is kind of personal, so tell us if you feel comfortable sharing. I'm kind of putting them on the spot. But Esther, we're gonna start with you. Let's mix the deck up so we don't know what's coming. Here we go. You guys ready for this?
By the way, I want to hear your comments. Did you like the show?
Oh yes. Somebody's saying if I can call them after. Sure. What's the name of the game? This game that we are going to be playing is called Coping Skills. You can find it on Amazon. I'm thinking actually to put it on my Instagram, like a whole bunch of games. Here we go. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. Esther, how well do you use the concept one day at a time as a coping skill?
I don't really use that. I don't really use that as much as I need to.
Really?
One day at a time.
All right. So what do you think? What do you think about that?
I did that more when I was in a crisis mode, when I was back in. No, for real. Like when I was in school, And that was my coping mechanism. When I was in school and I was stressed out and I was constantly under like chronic stress, I was like one day at a time, just through this test, just through this day, just through the Shabbat, everything just meal, like just get through the shower, like everything was just this moment at a time.
Yeah.
But now I feel like I'm in like the best place of my life that I've ever
Wow.
been. I'm just happy.
Look at that.
Yeah, I feel like
I think it's the white blazer.
Guys, my sister gave it to me.
But yeah, I really listen. Sometimes, like I like the word you used. When I was in crisis, a lot of times, yeah, our life can be balanced, and then something happens where we have a dip, and that's a crisis moment.
Right.
So this is a coping skill that you can definitely use whenever you're feeling down. Okay, Yocheved, you ready for yours?
I am
Let's do it.
ready.
Okay, let's mix it around.
I'm
Let's
actually
mix it around.
nervous.
Here we go. You ready?
Yes.
Ooh. How well do you use keeping in touch with friends or family and getting support as a coping skill?
All the time.
All the time. Tell us about it.
Actually, I am a very, very big believer in calling a certain person for a certain situation. For example,
Interesting.
depending on the situation, I will call a certain friend.
She's told me this too.
Just like there are some people that will call this one specific
Right.
friend for everything. I actually have a bunch of different friends. And there's a Rolodex.
Different categories. I
Today
love
I'm
that.
dealing with the.
I mean, Yocheved has many friends.
Depending on the situation, I will
Wow.
call a
Look
certain
at
friend
you.
based on who will probably guide
Serious
me
coping skills. This is legit.
in the right direction for that particular situation, because it's the expertise of the situation that matters.
That is so
Yeah.
interesting. Having a strong support system, talking about coping skills. We want this life to be something beneficial that you can apply to yourself. This is absolutely not therapy. I want to just let you know, this is not therapy.
Right.
We're just having a conversation.
For example,
We're just having a conversation, but
Yeah.
this is a tool that you can use.
when I wanted to lose weight, I knew the friend to call.
Esther, she's the number one.
Right? So there you go.
You're so sweet about it.
All right.
All right. Okay, let's go.
I think we should take her card out of the mix.
I did.
Okay.
Okay, let's
Let's
mix
see
it
what
up.
Avi's gonna
Oh
get.
my
All right, I'll
goodness.
mix it up for you. I was going to say the one right after.
It's go ahead.
How well? Let's see. Yocheved.
Avi,
Mm.
how
This is a
well
great question.
do you
of course.
use kindness to yourself as a coping skill?
This is great because we were
Wow.
I want Rivka to answer that question.
How well do I use kindness? Rivka, how well do I use kindness? Do you want to answer? How well do I use kindness? Actually, I will tell you, the most fulfilling thing I do, and I look at it as kindness, is when I work with my animals, with people. That fills me up with so much joy. You don't even imagine imagine you see a person in a
Wow.
wheelchair, bawling, crying, saying how they lost their pet, or their animal died and they're not able to, they have an animal but they're not able to go home, and they're able to get that comfort from the animal. That just does something for me. So I
You're
think
literally living in your essence. when you say that's
that is me. That
that's
is
your
my
destiny.
identity.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
All right, go ahead, Esther's turn.
All right.
All
And
right.
then after this,
We're gonna go one more round.
One more round.
And then we are going to wrap
She's
up.
looking through the questions.
You can't look for questions. No, you a cheater.
Sorry, I thought I was allowed.
No,
I was
you're not
looking
allowed.
For something good. Okay, you read this.
All
I
right,
don't
here
know
we
what I
go.
chose.
How well do you do? How well do you do in getting your needed hours of sleep as a method to cope?
Oh,
It's terrible.
Wow.
Really bad. This is one of the 6 habits that I coach people in: healthy sleep.
Uh-huh.
And I really I kind of and this is something I have put for myself. I actually have a coach that I work with to help me.
Wow.
And I told her like I need to sleep better. So
Wow.
sleep is important. You know, you should not use electronics for like 30 minutes to an hour before bedtime. Who does that, right?
I actually just want to commend you on
Right.
sharing something right now. You said a coach that you work with.
To help.
I am a therapist, but I also will work with a therapist. Sometimes clients will ask me like, do you see a therapist, right? And the answer is yes, of course. Any good professional will
Right.
always have a professional as a consultant
Right.
to be able to
Absolutely.
able to
That's
talk
why-
about how they're dealing, how they're coping, how they're able to help
Sleep
others.
is essential for quality of
100%.
your
So
brain,
I very much
quality of your
respect that.
day, which is why we're gonna wrap it up.
for Avi, and then I get the wait.
Wait,
That's
Esther, that's
That's
for you.
for me.
Go ahead.
Okay,
How
that
well
was
do
fine.
you use an upbeat attitude as a coping skill?
I'll be very honest. Sometimes I probably don't use it as much as I should.
Tell us more.
As much
You can't be
as
fake. I know you're like real.
yeah, I'm too real, and sometimes that's not always a good thing.
No, it's good.
As much as I want to be like upbeat and optimistic, and there's some people you walk into a room and they had the biggest fight, and then you come in and like, oh, that was everything, and you have no idea what just
But
happened.
I think that's why so many people love you on Facebook. I mean, in real life too, but but on Facebook specifically, I think because they are so in tune with your realness, your real personality, and I think it comes off very much on camera for you.
Yeah,
too.
like so sometimes I feel like sometimes I wish I can kind of hide when I'm not in a good mood or when something is really terrible. But you can so see it on my face that even if I pretend to smile, they're like, "What happened?" So
I love that.
yes.
She doesn't have a good poker face, that's for sure. All right,
Okay,
ready?
Johanna, you want to ask?
Last and
All
final
right,
question
last
for the
question.
evening. Here
All
we
right,
go.
we're wrapping up. How well do you use, Avi, awareness of your strengths as a coping skill?
Awareness of my strengths. I think
That's a great question.
I do. Yeah, that is a pretty good question. I do think the way I use my strengths is before I became a therapist. If I woke up in the morning and I was feeling crappy, I would feel crappy the whole entire day, and I wouldn't understand why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. Everything would be fine, right? Everything is okay, all's well, but I would just feel like low and down and sad and upset. I wouldn't even know why.
Energy.
Now that I'm a therapist, I'm able to, if I wake up in the morning and I'm feeling crappy, I'm able to kind of tune into and channel into my mind and see like, okay, what's going on right now? Try to backtrack. Okay, what happened yesterday in the morning? What happened midday? What happened at night? Find the trigger, work out the problem,
Unpeak it.
reprocess what happened,
Wow.
and then kind of get that out of the way and start the day. I feel like that helped me the most.
That's a great tool.
So guys, thank you so much
fun.
for tuning in. Wow, what a turnout. We thought we failed with having multiple lives today, and it ended up turning out to be
We're
so
like a
amazing.
cat with 9 lives.
Thank you guys so much for
Thank you for
tuning in.
tuning in.
Wait, so what are we doing? I know I'm putting both of them on blast. I'm putting both of them on the spot. But
What's
what
the
are we
question?
doing with going forward?
We are going to have more shows.
Ooh, getting ready. All right, guys.
The only thing is trying to structure the time, the
Right,
place,
that's true.
when we're all available.
And
So
we love doing it.
we
do.
absolutely love doing it. So as much as we want to do it on a weekly basis and
Yeah.
have the same set of time so everyone
Right.
knows
We
when
love all
to
the
tune in.
support. Thank you
100%.
so much.
Sometimes because of our schedules, because Avi works at night, we both work at night, depending on what events we have coming up.
Right.
Certain days of the week, even though we want to plan ahead, it's not really in
It's
our
not
hands
feasible.
to plan it ahead. So most of the time, we're going to try to be consistent.
But this was really,
really special.
really enjoyable. Guys,
hope you
thank you so much for
enjoyed
tuning
it.
in.
Have a
We'll
good
see you
night.
guys hopefully
Till next time,
next week.
have a great night while
All
Avi
right.
presses the end button.
There we go.
Bye.